Hi everyone, welcome back to Liz Sews. So if you've been watching my channel for any period of time, you'll know that one of my favorite materials to work with is lace. Now, most patterns include instructions for how to use lace in their pattern, but not all of them do. So in today's video, I'm going to show you different ways that you can modify your upper cut piece so that you can keep that really lovely lace edge. So when we're thinking about lace, I know that it has a scalloped edge. So in this example here, you can see, we've got lots of scallops and up and down here. But ultimately, this is a straight line. And that straight line runs along the lowest points of the scallops. So if I put my ruler here, you can see that yes, this is a straight line that runs all the way across, even though you have that little decorative edge that peeks out over, you're getting a straight line consistently across the edge of the lace. So when we're looking at our cut pieces, what we need to look at is seam allowance and is it a straight line? So the first example I have here is the Boylston bra from Orange Lingerie. Now this one does not include any directions for lace. So the first thing we want to look at is seam allowance. Does this have seam allowance? Yes. So in this particular pattern, this one includes a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. But when we're using lace, we don't want to have to turn over our scallops at all. We want the edge of the cup to be the edge of the lace. And so actually what we need to do is remove all of that seam allowance. That's going to be the first step. Just cut all of that off. And again, a lot of these indie designers now are marking all of the seam allowances in there, so it's always really easy to just trim stuff off like that. And then the next thing we need to do is straighten out this edge. Because we have a straight line on the lace, we want to make sure we have a straight line on the edge of here. So when we're drawing our straight line, we want to go from known point to known point, right? So we don't want to change how this wire line acts over here, and I don't really want to change how the neckline acts over here. So I want to make sure that I'm going to connect my straight line from the seam allowance marking on the wire line all the way to the seam allowance marking over here, and then continue that line straight. So I'm going to line up my ruler like so, meeting that point and my seam allowance point, and then I'm just going to draw a straight line like that. So in this particular instance, you can see that we are getting rid of just a little bit of the upper cup that sort of extends in the center portion here, but we're still maintaining exactly where we were on the wire line and the underarm edge. So when we cut this out of our lace, we're going to align this straight edge with the lowest points of the scallops on our lace. So I would align that straight line with the low points of my scallop on my lace like this, and then continue to cut out my pattern piece as so. And that's all you really need to do. So for my small cup size here, normally I will line my lace in sheer cup lining. A lot of people recommend using elastic along that edge of the lace. I don't particularly like sewing elastic on there just because I don't like how it looks. I would prefer to have sheer cup lining behind it, and then that's enough stabilization that there's no actual tension being put on the lace itself. But this is a really simple one of the Boylston bra. Now, of course, for the Boylston bra, you're going to have to make some considerations because normally you have a strap attachment or the strap that's coming up on this side here, so it has a separate piece of fabric that attaches right there. You can go ahead and do that with the lace. You can attach your strap to your lining and just have the lace floating over top of it. And that's probably the easiest way to do it if you want to maintain that strap. So the next one I want to take a look at is the Fenway bra from Orange Lingerie. So you can see on this line drawing of the Fenway, it normally uses fold over elastic along the neckline edge here. So we don't have to worry about seam allowance because when we have fold over elastic, there's no seam allowance. And so all we really need to do is straighten out that edge from the neckline to that strap attachment point, and that will allow us to have our lace going along the neckline edge there and there. So it really quite drastically changes the look of the bra itself. So let's take a look at the pattern pieces. So here is our Fenway cup pattern piece. And you can tell here that there's no seam allowance, there's none marked in, and that's what we would expect with a fold over elastic cup. And actually this one is already quite straight. But again, just like we did for the Boylston bra, we're going to connect a straight line that connects this point up here to the seam allowance point down there, and then we're going to continue that straight line down till we finish off the cup. So I'm just going to take my straight edge ruler and connect those 2 points. So in this particular instance, we're actually adding just a little bit of fabric here on the neckline edge. Now in my experience, I've never had any problems with that. As long as the bra fit me in its current state, it still fits me once I straighten out that neckline edge. But just be aware that when you're meeting these 2 points through, you do have the possibility of removing fabric as well as the possibility of adding extra fabric along that neckline edge, just depending on what that arc looks like. And again, just like we showed with the other one, when I'm cutting this out, I'm going to align the low points of my scallops with that straight edge of the pattern piece, and that would be how I would cut this out. Obviously not cutting that scallop portion at all. So those 2 options were relatively straightforward, but what happens if you have a piece that looks like this, where you have like, a strap attachment? So in this particular example, you can see that I have removed all of my seam allowances along that neckline edge, right? But it's really quite curvy. So if I was to connect there to there, you're really significantly changing the look of that pattern piece. So in this case, I would actually recommend breaking this up into 2 pattern pieces instead of a single one. So if I take a look and I know that this is this point here where my seam allowance is on that side cup seam or the wire line. I'm going to connect my point there, and then I need to figure out where I want to connect my straight line to over on this side. And I want something that sort of like is very similar to my original pattern. So I'm just going to use my straight edge ruler, pivoting on that corner and just seeing where it looks like it's sort of like a good balance point of that edge. And so I'm going to draw my line in here. So you can see I've taken away some fabric over here, but I've also added some fabric right here, but I'm still basically running the same shape as my previous one. So in this instance, I would make this an individual cut piece, and this one is an individual cut piece that's going to work with lace. So here's what that lower cut piece would look like. And of course, we gather the lace up, what I would do is align that straight edge of my cut piece along the low points of the scallops here, and that's how I would cut my cut piece out. And then when looking at this upper cut piece, I want to go ahead and continue to use my scallops along this edge here. So again, I'm going to need a straight line. So I'm going to come from this point to that point in a straight line. And if we cut this piece out, like that. So you're gonna have just a really tiny little piece. Now I would add some seam allowance onto the bottom of this guy. So I'm just gonna take my cut piece, tape it on there. And then probably need probably 1/4 of an inch. So that's gonna be my new piece. And when cutting it out, I would align that straight edge with the low points of the scallops like so. And then when it comes to constructing this, of course, you'll have scallops along this edge. You're going to have scallops along this edge. And I would just overlap these on top of each other. That's why we've added a little bit extra seam allowance on there. So I just overlap it on top of each other like so, and then zigzag down right here. So then you're going to end up getting scallops that come down this side and across the neckline edge. So that's a really easy way to sort of take a pattern piece that's super curvy and break it up into multiple pieces. That way you still get that sort of like contour to it, but you are able to add the lace edge, which needs to be a straight edge. So I hope you enjoyed these different examples of how you can sort of modify your pattern to use a lace scalloped edge along the neckline. And I will see everyone next time. Take care.